Amy Jordan, welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here. Right, my first question for you
Yes.
is, how would you describe your writing and your publishing journey?
Well, my writing journey began when I was really small. So I would describe that as lifelong and roller coaster-ish. And it used to be something I did for fun and for meditative purposes. And it still is to a large extent, but now there are deadlines. You know, the publishing journey has been, I suppose, kind of a roller coaster in many ways. And
Mm,
I had these preconceived ideas about what it would be like, in good and bad ways, and all of that has been dispelled over the last few years. But largely, it's a very positive experience. And one of the things that I really love is talking to readers, and that feels really great because I'm a huge
yeah,
reader myself, and I love talking to the creators of the books, and so it feels like a whole circle thing that's really enjoyable.
yeah.
So overall, a privilege to be writing for readers who want to read my work because I spent such a long time, probably like 35 years, creating stories that I thought nobody would ever read. So the fact that people want to read my stories is hugely enjoyable and a real privilege. But it is a business. That's the thing.
I think
So, it's a creative process, but once you hand your book over, which feels like a big slice of yourself, then you enter into a business world. So
mm,
that's really interesting.
'cause I was going to ask you. I had like two questions. But I was going to ask you, like, what was the biggest reality check for you? Like, once you became involved in the publishing business. And I always think now it's when you realise that this is a business.
Yeah. Um, there's been loads of reality checks along the way. And I think one of the first ones was that rejection doesn't necessarily come from an agent or a publisher, because those things happened quickly for me. So rejection might come from other areas that you hadn't been expecting, like
Mm.
inclusion at festivals that you thought would happen that didn't, um, different things like that. So the reality check being that it's amazing when your book is on the shelf, but that can feel quite flat a couple of weeks later because there's a sort of expectation, well, this is it, like
Yeah.
everything's happening now. And then you realize, oh God, there are so many books being released on the same day, in the same week, in the same month. And there are plenty of readers, but you can feel a little lost at times. So I guess that was the biggest reality check, that you get through the hurdles of getting an agent and getting a publishing deal, and then there still is the sense of, oh, my book is out of the shelves. That's so great. And then you're sitting at home going, well, what happens now? Like, what's next? And it's like, now you write the next book. It's like, oh, right, okay, back to the desk.
But
But
I remember thinking, like right at the beginning, when I didn't know any better, you
mm,
just thought, okay, well, I've got the agent. That's the biggest hurdle. Oh, now I've got the deal. That's
yeah,
amazing. And then you think, okay, now my book's going to go out. And that's it. As soon as
yeah,
it's released, it's got to hit the charts because you just think it must be easy to
yeah,
hit the charts.
yeah.
And then
And
sometimes all those things don't happen. You're like, oh, pre orders are important. I didn't know pre orders were important, and now I need to go out and sell myself and sell the
yes,
book.
yes. And you do forget that the authors that I've read for years and that I followed for years started the same as this. And you build a brand,
Mm,
you build a readership, and there's no overnight success. Well, if there is, it's very rare. Um, so that was a good reality check, that you're starting from the beginning and you're starting from the bottom and you're working your way into hopefully a great readership that will sustain you long term. But the immediacy of this huge success that you're dreaming of, and watching. The reality is that you build that. I
yeah.
think that's more realistic than having an overnight dream come true, topping all the charts, movie deal. That's the dream, but you have to build into it.
Yeah. I always think it would be nice to have those things like at the
Yeah.
first go, But
Mm.
then sometimes I think, well, if you get all that right at the beginning, like if if this is your debut and you get all of that,
Yeah,
then there's probably going to be so much pressure then on you for the next book for it to replicate all of
yeah,
those things. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily happen.
absolutely. And I heard someone being asked at an interview once, they had a really successful book and they were asked, so do you think your best book is behind you now? And I just thought, oh my God, like,
Oh,
you want to think the next book is going to be even better than the last one that you've written and is going to be even more successful. And that's a thing that spurs you on in the long nights editing your work. So the
yeah.
idea that, like, you're quite right. The idea that you might have your best book first is kind of scary because if it's huge and then everyone expects that for the next one, but if that doesn't materialize, then that book was the best one. And it's kind of,
I think that's horrible,
hmm,
actually, to have that. Because it's a horrible pressure. To like,
yeah.
I don't know why I'm talking like me and you have had like £7 million book deals
I know,
and
it would be
TV
great.
and movies. It would be fantastic.
Yeah,
But
I
I
would
would
feel
just,
pressure.
yeah, but it would be a horrible, horrible pressure tag. I remember even the pressure I had writing the second book in my series. And the only reason why I thought I had the pressure, it wasn't just because of the second book syndrome, it's because at the same time I was starting to get feedback for the Jigsaw Man
Yeah,
from, I think it must have been on net, it must have been going on NetGalley and
yeah,
stuff. And yeah, so you're starting to get the feedback and you're like, oh my God, like
yeah,
they like it and they think it's good. And can I do this again for the second book? But that's a different sort of pressure as opposed to I've now got critical and commercial success and it's bigger
yeah.
than I thought it was ever going to be. Can I
Mm,
do that again? And it's your
absolutely,
best book. It's
absolutely.
horrible.
Who wants that?
It's like you peaked too soon. But it's like you don't want to feel like you've peaked
No.
too
No,
soon.
like it's a nice idea that you're growing all the time as a writer and that
Mm,
the next book you might iron out a few things that you maybe niggled from the previous book and that at each one you find your confidence and you find your flow and that each one
yeah.
gets better than the last. That's a really nice aspiration, I think, rather than having this hugely successful debut and always having to live up to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. But I'm glad it hasn't happened. I mean, I'm not that I would say no to the money because like you'd never say no to the
No,
money.
who
But
would? Yeah.
but I'm glad it didn't happen that way. Amy,
Mm,
so it's a question I like to ask. When
okay.
did you know that you were a storyteller? So I always feel like you can be a good writer and like
Mm,
write well, like you know your grammar and your punctuation. But when
yeah,
did you know you could tell stories?
I don't know, but I do remember, I have three younger sisters and you play
Mm.
with your dolls, your Barbies, or whatever. And I always wanted to direct the narrative of the game. So I think maybe it's just being controlling rather than being a storyteller. I would give their Barbies dialogue, and my sister would either join me or get fed up. But I would get them to play out a scene. So I always had a scene for the dolls to play out and words they should say. So I think I was just creating a story for the dolls and trying to get my sisters involved in playing that out.
Mm.
Um, and one of my favorite ever things to do was English essays. It was just such a joy if we got that assignment. And my mother said that, like, from 5, I was bringing her scraps of paper with stories. Please, will you read this? And she said they really freaked her out because they were really dark. There's always like a monster hiding in the backseat of the car on a family trip and stuff. But it's just a part of my life. Like all my memories contain stories, either reading
Yeah.
them or writing them or making my sisters act out my stories with the Barbie dolls. It was just always there.
Is your family creative?
There isn't anyone else who paints or writes or any of the traditional creative things. Um, Singing would be a thing when we gather, when people gather together.
Yeah.
Um, but no, not particularly creative. No.
Do you ever wonder where it comes from then? Because I always wonder. Because I have creative parts to my family. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, some sing. I'll go, one of my cousin, he acts.
Oh,
He's always doing stage plays and stuff. So, there is that creative that flows through
yeah.
it. But you do wonder, like, where does it come from? Especially when you're writing, and some days it doesn't work. And then
Yeah.
there are days when it just
Yeah.
flows out of you.
Well, there's something a friend of mine said that was really interesting because I must have been stressed by some element of my publishing journey or a book plot that wouldn't come together. And he said, I don't know what you're stressing for because this is your path and this was given to you. And you have to do it because it's for you. So you just need to iron
Mm,
this part out and get on with following your path. And I just thought, that's really interesting. And then he said, where do you think the book came from? Like, who gave it to you? Do you think you actually came up with this? And this concept that this is for you, this is your path, and because you really
yeah.
enjoy it means that you're following the right path. I have no idea where the creativity came from, except from loving books and loving stories. And I do have a number of aunts who would have been great to tell us creepy stories when we were staying in
Yeah.
their houses and tell us their experiences with the banshee and with hauntings that they had. And um, that always just made me so excited and so happy to listen to stories. And I think I've had an understanding all my life that books equals joy.
Mm,
So I've watched my mother be a massive reader all my life. My grandmother used to send us shopping bags full of books every week, and they were mostly Mills and Boon books, which probably weren't appropriate for me at that point. But books connected people, all the
mm.
time watching that. So it was really great to understand that and absorb the stories I was told by my aunts and um, ghost stories in particular. They always seem to be creepy and dark.
I was
Yeah,
going to ask, why is it always a ghost story? Because even when I think about the stories, like my grandparents would
yeah,
tell all the uncles and aunties, especially if you go to Grenada and you're sitting there with them, it's always some kind of ghost following somebody
yeah,
on the walk home.
yeah, yeah. And like our ghost stories always involved the banshee. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it was this
Yeah.
idea of a really long haired woman who would cry and wail outside your house. And then when she was observed or heard doing that, somebody was going to die. And like I've heard so many stories over the years where people heard the banshee and then somebody died. It's just I don't know if there's any like where this comes from or what this means, but it fires something in my imagination that this is so creepy. There's actually a
Yeah.
scene in the dark hours where Julia is in a place called the Carmichael Estate and she's looking for the killer. And there's this walled off garden, and there's a crumbling wall, and then iron railings on top. And he's inside that garden looking at her through the railings. And then she runs away, and he follows her. He runs parallel with her. And that scene came from a ghostly experience that my uncle had, which I was told when I was a child and never left my psyche. So everything that you encounter kind of gets stirred up in your brain and
Yeah.
comes out in the books then.
They always say like nothing's ever wasted. Like any
No.
story you've heard, any experience that you've had, even on what day is it? Say it's Wednesday today, so Monday. I was up the opticians getting my eyes tested because doing this job, my
Yeah.
eyes are deteriorating. My eyesight. But he wasn't my local. He wasn't my normal optician. My usual optician was on holiday, so it was the locum David, who's also a writer. But
Ah,
he was telling me he writes nonfiction, but it was just explaining to me about the eyes and how they function and how they in themselves are like an individual fingerprint as
oh
well, in
wow.
addition to your yeah. So all this stuff. So we were sitting there chatting, and I was just like, oh. And he goes, I bet this is going to give you an idea. And I said, it did. It
Oh,
did. And it's just like, no, there's not one experience that could ever be wasted. You can always use it and incorporate it. in
Yeah,
some way into your
absolutely.
work.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. That's really interesting. I didn't know that about eyeballs.
No, I was like, what? Because he'd taken a picture of my eye and he was showing, because I'm just nosy, I always ask questions.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he was showing it to me and explaining. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm going to use it. I'm going to use it
yeah,
somehow.
yeah,
Amy, I was wanting to ask you, when you were saying your friend was telling you that this is your path, like
yeah,
writing is your path, do
yeah.
you think you would have recognized that if it hadn't, even if it hadn't been told to you?
Um, maybe so because of the compulsion to write.
Mm,
But I think I kind of fell into publishing. Like it was sort of I was looking for a job, and so I was looking for my CV on a laptop I hadn't used for 10 years, and I found all my old writing bits. And then I decided to finish a book, and then I decided to send it off to an Irish publisher, and it snowballed from there. So I don't feel like I ever sat down and said, right, I have this plan. I'm going to be published by this age. So I'm not
yeah.
sure if he hadn't said that, I'm not sure that I would have just accepted it as something that's meant for me. Because at times, it can feel like a struggle if the plot's not coming together or if the character isn't
Mm.
really speaking to you in a way that helps you with the next chapter. But now I fully realize what he said, and I think I'm looking at other people and the things they're doing and realizing that's their path. They're on the right job. And I've had so many jobs in my life. I started working at 15 as a cleaner in a factory, and I've had so many jobs, and it became like a joke, oh, where are you working now? And I never settled into any of them. And I'm notoriously uh, flip floppy on things, but I
Mm.
have never felt that about writing. So I think he's right. I think this is the path, and
I
I
think you I think when something doesn't sit right,
yeah,
when like a job that you're doing is not the right thing for
mm,
you, or it could be right for that, it serves a purpose.
yeah,
So in the
if you,
sense that it serves a
yeah,
purpose in paying the bills and
yeah,
making sure you can eat and maybe
exactly.
have a nice and have a nice holiday.
I
But
get
it
him.
doesn't do, yeah, and get a mortgage. But it doesn't do anything more than that. It's all quite surface.
Yeah,
Whereas when you're doing something that you really want to do, like the writing, even the days when it's hard
yeah,
and you can't, you probably you might have a case of, I'm call it comparatitis, when you're just
oh,
comparing yourself to everyone. But
yeah,
even on those days, but you still keep on going.
oh yes, um, absolutely. I just finished the second book, featuring Julia Hart. And I sat back and I was like, well, what do I do now? Where do I go now? And then
Mm,
about 2 days later, I had this complete other plot, like a complete book. Now, I don't know the last quarter of it, but it's there and I can't get it out of my head. And it's just like, this is the next thing to write. And I need to take about 2 weeks off. And then I can't wait to get back into it. I've never felt that about another job before.
yeah.
So,
It's I
yeah,
was listening to when I was doing my walks, I was listening to Elizabeth Gilbert's Big
oh,
Magic.
yeah,
Because I'd bought it ages ago when it came out, but I never got around to reading it. And then I thought, okay, but I downloaded the audio book. And she was basically talking about the moment when you have an idea
yeah,
for a book. And if that idea is meant for you, like it won't leave you, no matter, like you won't forget about it. It will just be there until you get it written down. But if
yeah,
it's not meant for you, she told this, I can't remember who the other author was. Was it Anne Patchett? But she had this idea for a story
yeah.
and then she never got round to writing it. And then she went to see this author, I think at a talk, and they
Mm.
got to talk. I think she wrote to her, and then she was telling about the story that she was gonna write, but she didn't. And it turned out that that author had
Oh,
written the, yeah, exact
oh my
same
God.
story. Yeah, and she was saying like, if that's sometimes it's not meant for you, so the idea it just go. I know it's all very woo woo. I don't mind a bit of woo woo,
Isn't it?
but but that
Yeah,
idea goes to someone else who's meant to
yeah,
write it. So that idea doesn't really do it
yes,
die, which is probably why I'm going with the whole thing. Like when a story resonates with you and like it has to be written, even if you're on a break. Like
yeah,
I'm technically on a break.
Are
from
you?
writing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, until not until I'm gonna start, because when we're recording this, it's the 13th of August, so I'm on a break until September. But even though
Mm,
I'm on a break, there's still ideas
yeah,
in my head and like, oh, other stories. I think, oh, where did that come? We must be thinking about writing a book, but
exactly.
other stories are there.
Yeah, and it's an exciting time, you know,
Mm,
when the ideas are coming and you're like, that's something. Because there's inspiration everywhere, but you do have to
yeah,
sort of pick up the idea, turn it all around, go, is there 100,000 words in this? And sometimes there isn't. I've got a big folder of book ideas, but they're not books, they're short stories because I haven't been able to flesh it out. But yeah, it's really exciting. It's a nice stage to be in.
yeah. I was just thinking as well, like, I suppose you have to learn to trust yourself as
Yeah,
a writer and trust that what the story you want to tell is the right story for you, and it actually is going to develop into whether it will be a short story or whether it's going to be a
yeah,
book, but that, yeah, like, it has got legs. You have to trust yourself.
exactly. And this book that is fermenting in my brain doesn't feature Julia Hart, but she is poking her nose in and she's like, oh no, I could come into this chapter here. Like, oh, she won't let me go. It's nice. It's really nice.
During your whole journey and all
Yeah.
your I want to ask you about your jobs, all your flip-flopping
Oh, yeah.
jobs. do you think do you think there's any one of those jobs that you've done in the past that has helped you in some way prepare for this part of your life as a writer?
Yeah, all of them. So if you look at it that this is your path, so stay on this woo-woo thing, every single one of them. So where I lived growing up is southeast Cork, so it's near Ringaskiddy, which is quite a pharmaceutical area.
Mm,
So that was really helpful to the area in the recession to have Pfizer's and Smithkline Beecham and all these
wow.
factories there that were offering employment. And when I was 15, like most of the young women in the parish, I joined there. So cleaning, and it was quite solitary. I really enjoyed it actually. 6 to 9 in the evenings or 3 hours at the weekend, and I was mostly by myself and just getting on with my cleaning and forming stories in my head. So
Yeah.
that was like the first place, and it was just peaceful. So I'm the oldest of four girls, and that was really peaceful to go away and clean in a factory and be inside my own head. But then the rest of my jobs were mostly involving words. So I worked in the Department of Social Protection, and a big part of my job was writing appeals for people that had been turned down for social welfare. Um, and I did my absolute best to make sure that they got what they needed, but it was all kind of, it was like a 2,000 word submission as to why the process needed to go in this direction or whatever. So all of it was word based as much as I could get it, but there was so many different people that I worked with, and
Yeah.
all of them have helped me to form the characters that I write. Like I had a lovely boss. Well, he wasn't my boss. He was just there, I think, in a supervisory capacity. But he was really nice. But he used to walk in and say, "Morning, name tags," and like, that's really offensive. But like he was a nice person, but he just had this unusual way about him. But he's definitely formed characters that I've written. So I think every one of these flip floppy jobs that I've had, and some I did stay in, the way you get into a job because you need to apply for a mortgage, and then 8 years
Mm,
later, you're like, how
it's
am I
still there.
here? But no, it was just like sieving everything and pulling out this huge variety of people and experiences and customers that I dealt with and all of the rest of that. And it just helped to form stories and form characters. And like you said, your trip to the optician, nothing is wasted. Every single day there's a line of dialogue or there's an experience or something happens, and years later that comes out in a book. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
I think one of the things like I did love about practicing law
Mm.
always said that, you could have 100 people charged with the same offense, but everyone's story is unique to them. Like
Yeah.
their circumstances are unique to them. And when I think that's why you'll hear me say clients instead of characters by mistake. But every client is individual and they have their own characteristics, all these different things. And
Yeah.
and I thought, oh my God, it makes me think about how I build my own characters and making sure they're fully formed, because I realized when I was working with my clients, they're not just a cliche of someone who's just been accused of committing a robbery, for
Mm.
example. They have a whole background, they have a whole history,
Yeah.
whole different motivations that have probably put them in this position. So that's
Yeah.
how I always like to think of it.
Yeah. It's a whole life experience, and like I didn't publish anything until I was 40, but by then you just have this whole you've decades to draw on. So
Yeah,
I don't think I could have finished a book in my 20s. I just didn't have enough life experience, and I really admire people that do that. They can get so deep inside their mind and come up with something. But I certainly feel, you know, the last 20 years working in different places have really been fuel for plots.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I had the time to
Yeah.
finish the book when I was
Yeah.
in my 20s. I mean, I was writing things,
Mm.
but it's like you said, I don't feel like I was still learning about myself in my 20s. Like I wouldn't repeat my 20s again if you paid me, because you are learning you are learning about yourself
Yeah.
and where you fit in the
Mm.
world, and like your relationship. You're learning about all of those
Absolutely.
things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, to take away the mental space from that to complete a whole book and I think focus 100% on getting an agent and getting it published.
Mm.
I don't think it wouldn't have, there would have been far more rejection if I'd
Ab-
done it at like 22, 23.
Yeah, and no naturally built resilience to that, then I think.
Mm.
Yeah, that would
Did
have been
did
my.
that help you manage rejection? Do you think when you did come to the point where you were sending your books out on submission to agents?
Yeah, but you see, it happened really quickly, and I feel like a bit. No, I don't have an authentic answer to that because it happened very fast, and I know
Yeah.
it's not the normal experience at all. I sent it out. The first three chapters of The Dark Hours is largely as it was. It's edited a bit, but it's still the first three. And I sent that out on a Friday evening, and on Monday I had two full requests. Now I hadn't finished the book, I hadn't followed the rule, so I very quickly finished it. And then I went with my agent, and it happened really fast. So I feel like, and I do think that's a nice story actually, because I think there's this concept that there's a big gate and you can't get in, and you need to be prepared for years of rejection, and you need
Hmm.
to steel yourself. But actually, you can. And what I did was I did heavy research on what agents to submit to, because I had tried to get agents when I got my Poolbeg deal, but I didn't put much effort into it and nothing really happened. And then Poolbeg don't need you to have an agent, so that took off.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But in this regard, I researched who I wanted to work with. I made sure that they were open to submissions, and I felt they didn't have a huge amount of authors. Sometimes you look at who they represent, and there's like so many. They had lots of authors, but not an intimidatingly long list. And once I had those two initial, yeah, we'd like to see, then I stopped because I did want to work with them. So it wasn't a very long process.
Yeah.
So
I, I think one of the things like I would like advise to anyone submitting to agents, as well as having like your dream list of
yeah,
agents who I want, also look at the agents who have just taken on, like they just started in the
yeah,
agency and they're just building their
hmm,
list because they're actively looking for
exactly.
authors.
Yeah,
And I think that's always a good place to start.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And the website writing.ie had just done a feature on my agent, Sarah O'Keefe. And so I thought, well, she's putting herself out there, so she's obviously open to receiving submissions, and
Mm.
she's she's out there talking to writing websites. So yeah, so it just happened really quickly. Um, and that felt kind of shocking because I was very prepared to be in the trenches for a long time, and I had a spreadsheet of agents, and I was filling in
Oh, are
what.
you the spreadsheet one?
Yeah, I was go 5 a week and give them X amount of time, record the dates that you sent it off. And I found a really good cover letter on the website of an agent who represents Richard Osman. What's her name?
Okay. I
Um,
don't know.
oh God, it will come to me. She also represents Louise O'Neill, and she had a website and she had a sample cover letter there. So I used that and it worked out really well. So, but I was very organized and very researched, and all I hadn't done was finish the book. That part came after, but it worked out okay.
See, I really don't. I think that's just come from doing this podcast and talking to so many different authors, that there are so many authors who have had like a clear strategy,
Mm,
either when it came to writing the book that they wanted to write, saying, look, this is a sort of irrespective of trends, but this is the book I want to write, and this is what I want to get from it. So they've had a clear strategy in regards to that, or there's been a clear strategy in terms of how they've approached the whole submission or query process of
yeah,
agents. But also, I think it's like a good thing for people listening to hear the different experiences of
yeah,
getting an agent, because it can. I always feel like I've got both sides. I've got the one version, which is the bit in my early 30s where I always had no business sending out this book, but I finished it. And I thought, oh, well, this is how it works. You write a book, you finish a book, you send it to an agent, they sign you. Happy
yeah,
days. You
yeah.
become a success. Yeah.
Dream.
And it was just yeah, and it was just succession of rejections. And I went through the whole rejection through a letter, and your manuscript being returned back to you, to fast forward to the email rejection. So I did all of that. I did the whole spectrum until I was 40. I can't remember, 44, maybe 42. I can't remember, 42, 43,
Yeah,
maybe. When I No, I finished the course in 2018, so I would have been 41. So when I finished my course and finished in 2018, and I signed with my agent, need to think, hold on, October, November, December, 4 months after completing my course, I signed with my agent, and 2 weeks after that, I had a deal,
yeah,
and I was in an auction. So
that's
I've
great.
done both sides, but I think it's good for people to hear all the
Yeah,
different scenarios,
yeah.
or everyone's experience.
Yeah, I feel like I jumped feet first into it because I finished my book and I was reading an Andrea Mara book at the time, and
Mm.
it was her third one with Poolbeg called The Sleeper Lies, and it's really brilliant, so creepy. And at the back of it, she thanked her publisher. So I looked up who that was, and I saw they're open to submissions, they don't need an agent. So I said, oh, that sounds good. And like at this point, I didn't know any writers, I'd never done a course. I never gone to a festival. I was completely naive as to exactly what
Yeah.
I was getting into. And they asked for the full book, and then they offered a 3 book deal. And then we went into the second lockdown. So it was all a very unusual experience. But over the course of those books coming out, I, for want of a better word, educated myself on the writing industry,
Mm.
made some friends, attended everything I could go to, realized, oh, I really should get an agent. So I feel like, once I decided I wanted an agent, I started strategizing because up until that point, I hadn't done anything like that. It was just, oh, this might work, and oh, this might be good. And it did work, and it was really good, but I needed somebody to guide me really because
Yeah.
I was just sort of no knowledge at all of the industry. So
Do you think your experience as writing, when you was writing under Amy Cronin,
yeah,
has that experience been completely different to your experience as writing as
Mm,
Amy Jordan?
yeah. Yeah, it has in so many levels because, first of all, because of lockdown and COVID, and in
Mm,
like our lockdowns in Ireland were very strict and very quick, and there was so many of them. And it was a good thing long term, but it meant then my books came out digitally first, and then the following year they came into shops. And that happened for two books. And it was a very unusual experience. It was for a debut author, and I fully understand their strategy because why would anyone buy a book online from an author they've never heard of? You're going to go to your
yeah,
safe authors that you know and love. And I think it was a wonderful, actually, experience in the sense that it was a soft introduction into the writing world and being a published author. The HarperCollins deal came very quickly, and the book also went out in the States, and it has been a hugely different experience that I think I'm only ready for because I had the softer introduction
yeah,
of books coming out sort of in a staggered way through lockdown. And like, I probably would have had just a series of panic attacks if I'd had to do a book launch for my very first book. And by the time The Dark Hours came out, that was my fourth book, and I thought, I'm actually okay about a book launch. I feel a bit ready now. That was four books into my career. Um, Again, this sense of I didn't really know what I was doing. And
mm,
an agent has been a great thing to have to explain, even acronyms and things. You're like, oh, I think I'm supposed to know what that means, but I
it's
don't. Is it okay to
it's
ask this question?
but it's also it's so amazing, and I don't even know like amazing in a good way, but it's just amazing like how much you don't know, and you're
Mm,
surprised that you don't know the most like basic of things. And I'm
yeah,
only going to say talk about copy edits because I just delivered mine like a couple of weeks ago,
well
but it's like
done.
I didn't know, I didn't have a clue like
Yeah,
what a copy edit was. And I've written so many, I say like in my other career,
yeah,
I've written so many applications and statements, and like writing's a big part of the job. And then when I'm teaching, I say teaching the baby lawyers, I'm teaching them legal writing. So and then it's like I didn't know what copy editing was. He's like, how could I not know these things?
yeah,
So
yeah.
you're talking about the acronyms. You're like, what?
Yeah, absolutely. And like literally, it was my fourth book was going on NetGalley, and I was like, okay, great. What's NetGalley? It, yeah, so I was still learning. I still feel like I'm an apprentice at this, and I've written
Yeah.
books now. So, and I don't want to lose that feeling as well, because when I do, then I'm jaded, then I'm tired. If I'm not asking questions, I'm not learning something. And as I may come to the point where I think I know everything there is to learn about the editing process or the publishing process, and I want to be surprised that I didn't know this, because then I'm still learning, it's still fresh, and there's still excitement
Yeah.
wrapped up in it. So I like, you know, I like to have these happy surprises. But like what you said about the copy edit, I did my structural edit, and it's like now we're going to the next one. It's like, sorry,
Yeah.
there's another
You're
one.
like, what? You're
Yeah,
like, isn't this finished? Like, because I know I wrote the end. I
yeah,
know I finished this book.
yeah.
And you're there telling me I need to do more things. And then
Mm,
more things.
yeah, and then a line edit, and you're like, sorry, what? So yeah, it's nice. I'm gonna say it's nice. Yeah, no, it's learning, and it's, you know, it's a process that actually I believe will take a very long time to get comfortable and to realize you get an email and I don't have any questions about that email. I'm not
Mm,
sure that day will ever come,
no.
and that's
I
okay.
don't think it should though.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
feel I feel the minute you get comfortable in the sense of I don't even need an editing email. I don't
Oh,
need to question anything. I'm not even concerned about writing the next book. I think the minute you become really, really comfortable like that, you might get, I mean, someone might tell me I'm wrong, but you might then get lazy and a bit complacent, and there's no, I feel like there needs to be a sense of jeopardy to what
Absolutely.
you're doing. With
Yeah.
writing my book, it's like, I'm writing this book, but I don't know if this is going to be the one. I don't know if, when you've, because I've heard it from other writers I know. They've written the book, the whole book,
Mm.
and the editors have turned around to them and said, no,
Oh my
this
God.
isn't the one. Yeah, this
Oh,
isn't going to work. This isn't the one. You need to like try again. And you've written, I'm saying 90,000 words. You've written a book.
that's a year of your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a year. So I feel like you need to have that bit of a, that little, it might even be like 5% of you that says, there's no guarantees.
Yeah.
So to keep you on your toes and to have you commit and do your best.
Exactly. Exactly. That story has just freaked me out, Nadine. I have to admit.
I'm sorry.
Just giving in my
I
second.
didn't mean to.
Oh my God. Can
But
that
imagine, well, when I heard that, I was like, what do you mean they don't want it? Like,
Yeah.
what? You wrote the book and they knew you wrote, they knew it. That's the thing. Like, they knew exactly what this author was writing
Yeah.
because they'd done the outline. They spoke, because, you've been, I remember when I got given my first deal. So that was for the Jigsaw Man, and they knew what the bind. It wasn't called the Binding Room. I think I called it False Prophets. So they
Mm,
knew what the second book was gonna. I hadn't written it yet, but there was an outline there. They knew what it was going to be about.
mm.
So the idea of having written that whole book and
Yeah.
then being told no, we don't want it. Like, no, that's a sort of stress. No, to be fair, no one needs that sort of stress. But I think you need to be aware, have that in back in mind, that could
Yeah. That could
happen.
happen. It's certainly an industry where you need a high level of resilience.
Mm,
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, and it's not a bad thing in a sense. Like you were saying, you don't ever want to be just daydreaming through your life and being complacent.
yeah,
So, and also like when the book goes out to readers and the reviews start coming in, if you have this assurance inside your head that these professional publishing editors and marketers, they love the book. So then there's a confidence behind that when the book goes out into the world. So,
yeah.
yeah.
What have you What have you learned about yourself from
Oh.
this whole journey?
Um, I've learned I can get up at 5 a.m. and start working, and I'm
It's,
relatively sane by the end of the day. Yeah. Um, no, I have learned a lot. I've learned to ask a lot more questions than I'm comfortable with asking in
mm,
general. Um, I have learned that I can go to an event with 2,000 people and not know anybody and be okay. Get a
yeah,
good hour there before I need to flee. I have learned to, like, the power of somebody else's opinion has reduced because reviews are a funny old thing, Nadine, and as all writers know. And there have been days where I just obsessively checked reviews, and now I've come to the point where I don't anymore. And it's quite interesting to live in an opinion culture and see a variety of different opinions on any one given day, which is such an interesting thing. And realizing that art is subjective, books
yeah,
are subjective, and like anything else, people want to talk about what they have consumed. Um, that's been a very interesting journey, realizing, how to filter out opinions when you need to, because sometimes you have to just kind of examine it critically. And it's interesting because in the last day, I've seen two reviews. One was 5 star because I couldn't guess who was behind it, and one was 2 star because I couldn't guess who was behind it. Really, really fascinating. And I get it, like, like if I go with a bunch of friends to a restaurant, one will say, "Oh, my food is so salty. I don't want to eat here again," and another will be like, "This is the best restaurant I've ever been in." So it's very interesting. It's a human nature thing, and it's like that's going to end up in a book. So yeah,
Yeah,
learning a lot really.
reviews reviews are a funny thing. Like, I don't read my reviews. I said unless I've been tagged in.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're being tagged in, you're like, oh, it's a review. I didn't realize it was a review. And you're like, oh, okay, it's been a good one. And there've been some. I'm like, I don't know why you bother tagging me. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. You don't need to let me know that. Like, I
Oh,
don't care. But
that's all.
it's horrible. It's horrible. It's a horrible. It's annoying because I'm
Yeah,
like, there's no need for you. You're doing that for a reason, and that reason is not good.
no.
It's because you didn't have to tag me in. But I was reading reviews of books that I've read recently. I don't know why I was doing this because
Mm,
I've got nothing to do now. So I was
yeah.
like, I was on Goodreads, and I've read a couple of books which I loved. And I thought, oh, let me just see what the
Yeah.
reviews are like. And I
Good.
thought, let me see what people didn't like. And the
Yeah.
ones that some of them were just unhinged. I'm like, you really just like their entire essays of
Oh,
why they didn't like. And you're like, you really there's something not quite right there. And some
mm,
of them are just I don't know why I picked this up. This is not what I thought it was going to be. Did
okay.
not finish. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just interesting. It's always interesting to read the 1 and 2 stars of other people if you just want to amuse yourself.
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes.
yeah. And isn't it Pride and Prejudice that has a 1-star review saying it's just a bunch of people going to each other's houses? It's so boring. Oh my goodness. But that's a really good thing to do because I've loved some books, and lately I've loved one, and I think I'm recommending it to everyone. It's the best book I've read in a long time.
Yeah,
And some of the reviews are shocking. And one was like, "This book should never have been written."
I know they're so cruel. You're like,
Well,
what? As I'm saying, you are there is something seriously unhinged about you because and you put a lot of work and effort
yeah,
into this.
your
Really.
time. And this, like there was a couple of years ago, hashtag be kind, and it just doesn't seem to apply to authors. It's like
No.
because I paid money for this or something, I have the right to tell you exactly everything that's wrong with you, which is quite strange. And obviously, and that like, what is it about the human nature then? Because I looked up Audible yesterday just to
Yeah.
see, because I've never looked up the audiobook, and it has something like 30 reviews and a 4.3 average. So I said I'll have a look, and there was 555, and it's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my God, a 3. So you're like, why don't the 5 stick in your mind? Why is it the one that's a bit lower?
No.
But I,
The ones that annoy me, not annoy me, the ones that I just roll my eyes at and like, you're not being difficult.
mm,
They're like, oh, I've given it a 4, but really it should have been a 3.75. What's the 0.75 about? Why are you just
uh, yeah. So that has been a learning experience.
yeah.
And learning
You know,
to, the human nature of going, oh, these are all great reviews. Why is this one bad? What's wrong with this one?
mm,
It'd be nice to flip that around, wouldn't it? And just go,
yeah,
oh, that was a bad one, but look at this 5-star. We can't
exactly.
do
It would
that.
be. You
Yeah.
know, before I go on to ask you about your book, The
Oh
Dark
yeah.
Hours, and
Yeah.
then do your final questions. You
Okay.
know, when you was talking about doing like going to events and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that, and I just remembered because me when you and I were at Harrogate, and I didn't realize we were both staying in the same hotel, and we bumped into
Yeah.
each other at the bar, and we were both doing the same thing. We're
Yeah.
getting a glass of wine, and we're going to our rooms, and we're
Yeah.
gonna stay there. Because you need to you need to decompress because you've been around people and it's a lot of energy to absorb
It
for
is.
a period of time. And I
Mhm.
thought that was so funny. I was like, yeah, I'm going back to my room. I
Mm.
ordered a I ordered an Indian, had
Oh,
some wine. I don't
right.
know, I was watching some tacky romance movie on the romance channel.
Yeah.
That was my
Yeah.
afternoon.
And I had this thing. I hope Nadine doesn't think I'm rude, but I just need
No.
phone. It was days. I was there since Thursday, so it was a long few days
Yeah.
of walking. Yeah, but it was nice to know I wasn't the only one escaping up to the room with a glass of wine.
No. And I feel like sometimes I feel like you have to be comfortable with giving, and it seems an odd thing to say, but giving yourself permission
Mm.
to do those things. I feel like you can be so grateful to, I've got the deal. My
Mm.
book's out there. I'm now being invited to not just to attend events, but to be on a panel, and I'm being interviewed about my books. You kind of feel obligated to stay in the space that has welcomed you in.
Yes.
But that space can be exhausting, and
Hmm.
you need to be kind to yourself and say, I'm going to take myself back to my hotel room with my wine and my
I
bad movie.
I agree. I can't remember. I think I went to sleep actually. I don't think I watched anything. Just went for a nap.
And I think there's loads of people doing the same thing. So don't be like worrying like, oh my god,
Yeah.
what's anyone
No,
else thinking? Because
no.
some people wish they were like, oh, I wish I'd done that.
Absolutely. Have the confidence to do what you need to do.
Exactly. So Amy, would you like to tell the listeners about the dark hours?
Yes. Thank you. The Dark Hours is about a retired detective named Julia Hart who has sought out this self imposed isolation for retirement. She's living with her little dog in a cottage in the east coast of Ireland, and her superintendent, Des, phones her. There's a case they worked on 30 years ago, which pretty much established her as a very illustrious detective, but destroyed her life in many ways.
Hmm.
And even though they know that the killer is behind bars, and in fact, he dies in jail in the first chapter, somebody is repeating his crimes as if they're following a blueprint. So Des asks Julia to come back and consult with him from the sidelines because this person is on a murderous rampage. So Julia has to go back and she has to face again the shadow of that killer that has followed her for 30 years. So it's a dual time narrative following Julia when she was 30 and dealing with that crime, and now when she's 60 and retired and very well respected, um, but has suffered a lot because of that original crime. But she's helping them to try and solve this copycat case.
Okay. Right. So I have two questions that follow on from the book.
Okay.
Did you face any challenges in writing The Dark Hours?
No, no, sorry. I,
You don't
well,
have to apologise.
um, a friend of mine is a Garda, so an Irish police officer, and I wrote chapter 2 and 3, and I asked her to read them, or I talked to her about them, and she went really, really pale, and she said, "If that happened to me, I would never get over that." So the challenge that I had at that time was, how am I going to take this character and create this whole book around this crime? But my friend alleviated that challenge because when she planted the seed with me that I would never get over that, now I had a character who never got over it, and I could then
Yeah.
build on that. And so I owe her so much because the challenge, I was like, where is this book going? That challenge immediately got alleviated by that comment. Because in chapter 2, Julia and her partner respond to a noise disturbance in the middle of the night in a housing estate, and a young girl runs from a house in her underwear and covered in blood. And while Julia's partner, Adrian, carries her back to the car, Julia goes into the house that she ran out of, fearing there's a second victim. So, what happens to her inside the house and what happens to her when she comes outside the house set the rest of her life. And when my Garda friend said she'd never get over it, it solved all the problems that I had because I now knew who Julia was. I knew what she had suffered, how it had shaped her. And that was a very enjoyable thing to write, to explore
Mm.
her PTSD basically, and also this sense of penance that she carries, this excruciating guilt from what happened in that house and outside that has actually shaped her whole life. So the only challenges that I had were sometimes there are a couple of scenes in it that are very creepy and very dark. And I found it difficult to write one or two of them. And I went and I put myself in the dark in these places, standing there waiting for inspiration. And then I came home and I listened to a Spotify playlist called Horror Film Soundtrack. So whenever I was struggling to get in the mood of that, I listened to music. But in general, it was a joy to write, which might sound strange for a very dark book.
No.
The character was wonderful to write, and in writing her, in developing her character, the plot was shaped. So in that regard, I felt that one fed the other, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think that, I always say when when you're writing the story, you always answer ask can't even speak, you're always asking the who, what, where, why
Yeah.
questions in regards to the story. But those who, what, where, why, and how questions, they also apply to the character.
Hmm.
And it's because you had that little, that small interaction with your friend that
Yes.
gave you the answers, like to who is she, why is she this way, and like
Hmm.
what is she gonna do
Yeah,
next.
absolutely. And how would she react? Because she blames herself for what happened then, that shapes
Mm,
how she reacts now. So she should get herself out of a situation here, but she did something very similar the last time, and that ended really badly. So she stays in this position. So it helped so much to form her and then form how she would react to the plot.
yeah. So nicely leads on to my next question. If you could spend an afternoon with any of your characters in the dark hours, whom would you choose and why?
Well, I think the obvious one would be Julia, the main character, because she has written a book about her career. It's supposed to be an academic textbook for detectives, and it's one of the reasons she sought anonymity and reclusion in because it went wrong. But I would like to look at that book to have plots for future books of my own. So I would spend an afternoon with Julia. But
That's so cool.
I would love to. This might sound bizarre, but I would love to spend the afternoon with her dog Mutt because he's the perfect dog. Did you read The Famous Five?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
did.
No, Timmy the dog is perfect. He like includes
Yeah.
everything they need, and he barks at danger, and he's always there to comfort them. I had a little dog called Rocky, and Mutt is visually is Rocky, a small ball of white fur, big brown eyes. But Rocky was like a lunatic dog, whereas Mutt is the perfect dog. So I would love an afternoon with Mutt to just walk him and sit with him and cuddle him. So yeah, probably Mutt.
Dogs are so funny. Reminded my mum's dog. Well, I say her old dog Sandy, who died, and because Sandy grew up with sheep from a
Mm.
puppy, she thought she was a sheep.
Oh,
You'd have to like tell her, you are not part of the flock of sheep. You
yeah,
are a dog.
yeah. Well, with Rocky, it was like you are not human and you are not in charge. Um, so yeah, Mutt is the dream dog. I wrote that
Oh,
for myself.
I love that. Okay, your final questions. Amy, are you an introvert or extrovert or a hybrid of the two?
I'm a hybrid. I'm happy chatting and I love people, but I also need a break. So a
Yeah.
hybrid, definitely.
Okay. What challenge or experience, good or bad, in your life shaped you the most?
So this would be dropping out of college after 1 year. So I was in UCC and aspirations to be a teacher or a journalist and first person in my family to go to university, and everyone was so proud. And once I got in, I began to make a series of very bad decisions, like dropping English for economics, which made no sense because I'm very bad at maths. I
What?
got
Why did you?
I wish I knew. I actually, like, I look back and I think I was self sabotaging, like, what was going on? But I did. So we have the leaving cert here. Is it your A levels or O levels? The later one that you do in the UK?
A A levels.
A level. Ours is the leaving cert. So, and I did 6 or 7 subjects. I can't remember. And I pushed myself so hard for 2 years and I did really well and I got into university and then I just seemed to crash. And looking back, I needed to step out of studying in academia for a little bit of time, but
Mm.
I didn't. And like I did, like weird things happened. I used to get lost a lot on campus. So like UCC is spread out all over the city. There are lectures in buildings that look like a house, and I just could not get my head into this. And my family were so disappointed when I dropped out, and I was carrying this awful failure. And I was handed a book. Have you read The Alchemist?
Yeah, I've read The Alchemist.
I was given The Alchemist, and I read it, and I got to that point right at the end. You know, that life changing message.
Yeah.
I was very skeptical that this could help me in any way, but it really, really did. And I'd always recommend The Alchemist for a metaphorical story on the fact that you can take the long way around. It's okay to take the long way around. So since then, I consider myself like a recovering perfectionist. I went back to college. I got a first in a business degree. I did a 3 year research master's, and then I began all my different jobs. But I proved myself to myself, but at the time, it was a really difficult experience. And I know my parents were really disappointed because I had no answers. Because even now, you're like, why did you drop English? I
Yeah.
don't know. It was just a lesson being formed that I really had to learn. And I
Yeah,
did.
because I was asking, like, why did you drop out? And you said you had no answers.
I have no answer to that. And I started economics, and I started going out with who's now my husband, and he was in that class, and he was excelling at it, and I was getting like 8% in exams. And it was just an awful time in my life. And like my self esteem was really tied in at the time to academic
Mm,
performance, because I was very disciplined and did well in school, but it was through application and discipline. It wasn't like, naturally gifted at all my subjects.
yeah.
And like when I look back in it, I did really well in English, but I was also doing Irish and German and French and so many subjects for my leaving cert to get enough points for this course. I then went into the course and I dropped out. And um, I think that shaped me in a lot of ways, like being the recovering perfectionist, understanding it's okay to take the long route. I got myself to master's level, and I'm really happy with that. And I've used that in my career, and also resilience building, because
Yeah.
it's just been, looking back on it, I look back on a young girl who needed a break from academia. I should have
This is
gone
what I was
back for a year. I should have just took a gap
not,
year.
but this is what I was gonna say because if you ask me now, and I'll always say one, it's not a regret, but I would say
Mm,
if I could go back to when I was not necessarily 18, but when I finished uni,
mm,
I I wish I'd taken a
yeah,
break, so
yeah,
taken a gap year before moving on to the next thing.
yeah,
Because I feel I don't know whether it's a thing as that when you're maybe like you're like the first one in your family, and maybe you're kind of like expected to go to university, and then you have gone to university, and everyone's proud of you to into going to university.
yeah.
It feels like if you take a break, it's
Mm,
kind of like saying, well, maybe I'm not, I'm not good enough to
yeah,
complete it. When
yeah,
really that's not the case at all. It just means that you just need a break from all the intense studying that you've been doing, I'm saying from the age of let's say from the age of 14 properly
yeah, yeah.
up to now. So yeah,
Mhm.
if I fully understand that, because if I could go back to 20, definitely to 21, I would have said, yeah, I've graduated, I'm taking a year off, and
Yeah.
now I'm going to come back and do the next thing. It doesn't mean you haven't achieved anything. It
Mm.
just means that you need a break.
And like I ended up being 28 by the time I left college. Because I did the 4 year degree and I did a 3 year master's. And I never felt too old for anything, like starting in the workforce, because I was teaching while I did the master's. But it felt like all my friends were doing their thing, and I was really happy for them. But I had parked the feeling of I should be, and
Yeah.
that was good. That was a good lesson. I don't have that anymore. I'll do it in my own time, is kind of what I've
Mm.
said to myself. So my editor might not like me to say that right now, but it was fine back then, 20 years ago. So yeah,
It's a good lesson.
yeah.
All right. Well, these questions are naturally following on. So the next one is, if you could go back to when you were 25 years old and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Okay, this is random, but it would be learn to swim. So because I believe that what you don't resolve, you pass on. And I have seen that. So I have had two near drown experiences in my teens. So I parked it. I'm not going near water. Me and water don't get along. Let's just not do this. And then I went and married somebody who lives right beside the ocean. So now I have a situation where I walk past the sea every day, but I won't go in. When my son was born, he was born terrified of water. And it has been such a drama to get him to learn to swim. I've had to reframe it to say, you just need to learn to not drown. And we just need to get to that point.
Get in the water.
And I just said to his instructor, when he can fall out of a boat and not drown, that he can get himself to safety, we're done. I don't need him to go on and do proper technique or whatever. That was the deal I made with him, just
Yeah,
get to this point. So my very wise friend who told me that writing is my path, he also said, what you don't resolve, you pass on. So I wish
mm,
I had resolved that fear. And I've tried in my 40s to learn to swim because I do live beside the sea. I've even gone for Reiki where she's put her hands on my pulse and got me to visualize it. It's never happening. I'm okay with this, but I wish I hadn't passed it on. So if I could go back at 25, I would conquer that fear, lay that ghost to rest, and not pass it on to anybody.
didn't you didn't you do swimming lessons in school?
We had the option of swimming or the gym, so I opted for the gym. But
That's
my mother told me I learned to swim. But and then when I tried lessons in my 40s, the instructor said, "You've done this before." But my brain has no memory of
it's
that.
blocked it out.
It blocked
The
it
only
out.
reason why I asked is because I remember, like in primary school. So I'm thinking from the age, I think from the age of 7 to 8, they teach you to swim. So every Friday, off we'd go to the local swimming pool,
Yeah.
and they taught us how to swim. And I can remember doing the whole thing with the floats, and we did our width, then we did the length, then they did the one where you're supposed to jump in with your, it was jumping in your pajamas, as
Oh,
opposed to replicate. It was
oh
weird.
God, no, no, no,
It was
no.
supposed to be, I suppose there was a poster trying to say if you happen to fall into the sea
Yeah, yeah,
in
don't.
your clothes,
Yeah,
yeah, this is what you'd have to do. But yeah, it must be about 7, 8, definitely in primary school. But then in secondary school, you didn't have to.
yeah. No, we
I
didn't
think
have
then it became an option.
that.
But in primary school, so I learned how to swim, but I'm one of those people. I like my feet to be on the ground.
Yeah,
So
you
I'm
know,
like, if
yeah.
my feet aren't on the sand, I'm
It's
not
fighter's
interested.
imagination, I think, because you probably realize anything I can't see below. I can't see
Hmm.
what's around me, and if anything could happen. There is that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I wish I had learned to swim. I'm right next to the Atlantic, and I can't swim. So, but look, I'm at peace with it, and my son has got to a point where he'll be okay if he falls
You'll
in.
be okay.
Yeah, and
I remember,
yeah,
before I go into your last question, well, yeah, the final two questions. When I went scuba diving, and I said I like my feet to be on the ground so I can swim and I can go out. But once my feet aren't, I can't touch the ground. I'm like, nah, I'm
yeah,
going back. But I
yeah,
went scuba diving, so we did all the lessons and everything in Grenada. But my thing was, it took me when we were allowed to, like, okay, you've done all the lessons. Now we're gonna go and do the whole big scuba trip,
yeah, yeah.
diving trip. It took me 3 attempts to like
Ooh.
go underwater because my brain couldn't understand that I was breathing underwater
Oh yeah,
every time. So
yeah,
I couldn't regulate my breathing because my brain would keep saying, "You're not supposed to breathe underwater. What
yeah,
are you doing?" And I had to keep going back up until I went back on the boat. And I'm like, I can't do this because I just couldn't. My
yeah,
brain just couldn't get it together until I had to have a strong word with myself. Me and my
yeah,
cousin were on the boat, and we're
yeah,
like, "No, we're doing this."
yeah.
And then once I got into the rhythm of it, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's about mind over matter, isn't it?
yeah,
But
it really is.
I've given up on that now. I'm not. It's not.
All right. So, Amy, we're going to go into what is your non-writing tip for writers? So I always say this could be drink water, go for a walk, read.
Non-writing tip: go to a coffee shop at least once a week by yourself and just absorb because, like,
Mm,
we write alone, and we're trying to write convincing and compelling dialogue. And I think the best place to overhear that is in coffee shops. Usually, people in coffee shops are meeting a friend and they're happy. So there's a lot of positive energy there. And I find it really restorative and I find it like filling up the well in terms of facial expressions and body language and dialogue. So I think a public place where you can spend an hour just absorbing people, not really observing them because that could be weird, but just absorbing energy and dialogue and body language, and it's just it fills up the writing well for me again.
Yeah. No, I agree because I always think one thing, I think it's why I still like teach, like when I can, because I need to be around people. So
Yeah.
you need to absorb people. You need
Hmm.
to hear people. It's not eavesdropping, instead it could sound a bit
Yeah.
creepy, but you
Yeah.
do need to be around them to absorb it and to hear language and conversations and hear and see, the different nuances of
Hmm.
people and how they interact and respond to each other. You need all of that in order to create yourself. When it's just you in your room, in your office, all
Yeah.
day, every day.
Yeah, there's only so far your imagination will go, and drawing on past
Yeah,
experience, you need new things. So I try and do that once a week, and it's really beneficial. It kind of pulls me out of a writing block as well, or a plot twist I need to work through, or whatever. I think it's good.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, sometimes it does work being at home because last night I could hear this guy out on the street because it's
Oh,
hot and everyone's all
yeah.
out. And I could hear this guy just screaming, "But I told her! But I
Oh,
told her!" And I'm like, "Ooh, ooh, what did you
yeah.
tell her?"
Did you
I
like
might
go
have
to
to.
the window and have a look? And
I couldn't see it where because I was in my bedroom, so where my window overlooks, it just overlooks over gardens. So I couldn't see, but I knew he was out on the street.
yeah,
But I was like, "Ooh, that's like good for a book." Like, what did you tell her? Because he kept just
yeah.
shouting it. I think he was leaving
Wow.
the pub round the corner. But I told her.
Gosh, that's really intriguing. It's like a great oopening chapter, a great prologue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
very good.
did use. I had a moment like that. I used in the Jigsaw Man, because I remember there's a scene where Henley's lying in bed and she can hear this man outside just screaming Dave, and that I lifted that from. I woke up one. No, it was like 3 in the morning. There's some guy was just like, "Dave, where's Dave?" And I was like, "Where is Dave?"
Yeah, who's Dave? Yeah, brilliant. Getting inspiration while you're in bed at night. That's
Yeah, those
fantastic.
moments, they're
Yeah.
fun. So finally, where can listeners of the conversation find you online?
I'm on Instagram, so Amy Jordan Books is where you find me. And I
Okay,
should do book talk, I think. That's on my to-do list. And I do think I need to do better on my social media. It doesn't occur to me that I should put this up online, but I will do better. But they will find me there, and, and all the book updates and stuff like that. And if I learn to
cool.
swim, I'll stick it up there on for some cheerleaders to help me along. Yeah. So
Let's follow Amy on Instagram so we can encourage her to learn how to swim.
no, already my heart is racing. No.
Okay, let's not do that. Let's just go on Instagram and say hello, and we
Hello.
love your books.
That'll be lovely.
Well, that just leaves me to say, Amy Jordan, thank you so much for being part of the conversation.
Thank you, Nadine. I've loved it. Thanks so much.